how do you clean a cheese grater? How do you? It's all full of cheese. It's like gunked up in there and shit. It's gross.
Yeah, my goal in life is to either have disposable everything or machine washable everything. Because if everything can go in the dishwasher, you bet your ass everything's going in the dishwasher. If it says can go, will go is what I read. It's like, this thing's going in every goddamn time. I'm not hand washing shit unless I have to.
That was a luxury I used to live with my mom. I don't know if it's because, like, I don't know why, but we basically always had paper plates, and that was kind of our go-to for dinner. And it was super disposable. Yeah, you know, like the food might go through the plate to your hand a little bit, but you could throw it all away in the end of this. You don't have to clean shit.
Listen, you gotta wash your hands regardless. After you eat, you always wash your hands, right? But like,
well, no,
if you don't have to wash, listen, you should do. You should, unless you want like Cheeto stains everywhere, man.
I very much do. The best part of Cheetos is like the layer of cheese dust off your finger that you can kind of like use your teeth to get off. You kind of like, honestly, like scrape it off.
Honestly, though, kind of true. The least favorite part about the cheese fingers, though, is when you accidentally get them on something that it's hard to clean.
It's true. It's true.
Like my brother ate flaming hot Cheetos, and he accidentally put his hand down on his like comforter when he was like younger. Yeah, you gotta wash a comforter, dude. That takes like hours to like wash and then dry and then like air dry afterwards. And like, is this fully dry or not? Because like, so that's the one that I don't like about Cheetos. The one thing I don't like about Pringles is that now that I'm older, my hand doesn't fit all the way into the container anymore.
You kind of just dump those in your face, like you kind of drink the chips. You kind of lose the self-respect that you need, and you just kind of go for it. I have a friend who actually changed my life when he showed me he ate all that stuff with chopsticks. So like Fritos, chips, whatever, anything with chopsticks, because you're typing all day or whatever. So kind of made a lot of sense. I never tried it myself, but I saw him do it all the time, and he had like a setup on his computer that I could never see myself having, but I kind of got it. It's like a lifestyle I never really thought of myself living, but he kind of lived it. The chopsticks and the Fritos and the transparent CLI on the Mac.
Bro, the transparent CLI on the Mac, that is some professional I'm a developer stuff for sure. Yeah.
Shout out to Andre, real champion.
I've done the Cheetos thing. The reason I don't like it is because I want to eat Cheetos. I don't want to eat one Cheeto. I want to eat Cheetos plural. And you can't pick up 500. You can't pick up a fistful of Cheetos, I'm gonna say, with chopsticks.
Yeah, okay. So, like, I've had this thing in my head, kind of going back to the movies recently. What's a reasonable amount of popcorn to grab in your hand?
As much as your mouth can fit.
Okay, because I do this, and I'm always, like, the fucking disgusting slob at the thing who's, like, and it's just, like, flowing out of my mouth, like, onto my fat, disgusting body, onto the chair, and I'm just like, oh, I'll get that. And I just do. And it's like constantly rolling out of my fist into my mouth and then missing. It's a mess, but I have the same thing. Like, I can't do 2 or 3 kernels, you know? I kind of...
Bro, who's out here eating popcorn one at a time? By the time the movie is over, you've eaten like a half the bag. Fam, I eat the whole popcorn like a quarter of the way through. I'm like, damn. If this movie was bad, I'd go get a refill.
Do you have that thing, like, because my mom and I, and like even Zenobia and I, whatever, basically my whole life, you get the popcorn and you eat it as fast as possible right when you get it. So like by the previews, you're halfway done. And I kind of started to become mindful of this, and I started listening to everybody else in the theater, and I realized no one else eats their popcorn in that time. I'm the only one like fucking trying to like fit the whole meal in my mouth before the movie starts, you know?
Okay, I don't try to speed run before the movie starts. I just, my goal is to have the popcorn done after the exposition of the movie. So if the movie is like an hour and a half long, like the first half hour, they're just like, this is whoever. Right? And they're just like, this is the main conflict. But then like the like next hour of the movie is like interesting and like gripping. It's like, I'm like, okay, I'm into this. So I want the popcorn to be done by that point. So I normally just like slam it. But
yeah,
I normally order nachos for the movies. I'll be 100.
Do you go to movie theaters where they deliver the food to you?
I have, yeah, like to
Roadhouse and stuff. But I mean, when you get nachos specifically, are you getting that at the place and then taking it into the movie theater? Mm-hmm. Aren't your nachos super disgusting by the time the movie starts because they're just like wet and like sloppy?
Yeah, I mean, listen, sometimes they pour the nacho cheese onto it, which I don't like, and sometimes they give you a little container, which is better, but the cheese is cold by the time the movie starts. So what you're really eating is like a brick of cheese and lightly salted, somewhat damp tortilla chips.
Yeah.
And it's not great. I don't really like movie theater food, but I will eat the nachos.
Movie theater food is really just like hot dogs, popcorn, and then every candy. So I mean, it's kind of a limited thing. You're not really a fan of those hot dogs, I can guess, and then the popcorn is kind of whatever. It's just classic whatever. But I mean, in my head, if you're a late 20s person and you're just like, oh, I can't wait for these like Mike and Ike's, like you're a weirdo, you know? Like buying candy at the movie theater is just a weird thing to do to me.
I would buy candy more at the movie theater, but the candy at the movie theater is always like 7 months old. So when you eat it, it's like hard. You're like, oh, sick, Mike and Ike's, and then you bite into one. You're like, this is like when Mike and Ike retired. Like this is like post rigor mortis Mike and Ike, dude. Like this is not like family friendly. And now you're like making noises to like get through your candy. Which in a movie I don't want to make any noise at all. Like I want to be as quiet as possible.
Well, that's kind of why I try to eat my popcorn before the movie starts, because I don't want to be that dude crunching stuff, you know, when the movie's actually started. I want to kind of be full by the time it happens. But you know, just whatever. Movies kind of weird. I don't know if I care about movie food.
I'll be honest. Unless I'm going to like Roadhouse Cinema. Yeah, Roadhouse. Yeah, unless they're going to like a sit down place where they bring you like actual food, like I'll order a pizza and they like made the pizza and brought it or whatever. I normally just get water. I'm like, one water, please, and then I just get one of the bottles of water. Even though they're like very expensive, I'd rather do that than get like stale candy and a soda that will give me heartburn immediately after the movie.
We were just talking about how we're like so much older than we used to be, but that right there, you said that movie theater candy gives you heartburn, so you order a fresh premium water.
No. The movie theater soda gives me heartburn. The candy is just old. The candy is just stale.
I feel like getting heartburn still is very boomer-esque of you, therefore...
I was getting heartburn in college.
Oh, bro, I got the same thing. I've had chest pain for 15 years.
Boy, this guy's hit retirement age already. Shit.
So that was like a... yeah. Anyway, I was gonna say a whole story that doesn't need to be said. I just made sure that I was recording. So unlike last time, stupid fuck forgot that I was not recording.
I think you did a good job. I listened to the last episode. I think you did a good job.
I happen to know that you listened to 6 minutes of the last one. I have our YouTube analytics. 6 minutes of the last one. I did listen to 6 minutes. That was like a third of the whole show. Okay, don't even at me like that. Okay. It's true.
I think it was good.
Thank you. Have we started recording? This is the episode at this point. Hello, everybody. You do your thing. Thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the newly formatted and thought through episode 81 of the Home Games Podcast. I'm Yazeed, and this is Joseph.
Hello, my name is Joseph. Today's Monday, May 10th, 2021. We have things on this Home Games list, but I'm going to go ahead and get it started. We have announcements. We are going to do this do this podcast every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks instead of every week. Starting 2 weeks from now. So basically this is the last regular episode of the thing. We'll come back in 2 weeks with kind of
with season 2.
A different thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Yazeed? We haven't really talked about it much outside of that initial, like, this is my idea thing I sent you.
Yeah, so I think you're right that doing the podcast does take time out of actually working on home games per week. My main concern is that we just won't talk in the week in between so that we would have stuff to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah.
Which I want to avoid if possible, because I do like talking to you. So if we can avoid that, then that having extra time to work on home games itself will be good. Because, yeah. I mean, sometimes you just have a rough one. Like, so I'll be honest, I have had rough weeks, and I've been like, well, I don't really have much to do. Like, I don't really have, like, the ability, mental fortitude, strength, time to, like, put into home games this week. So every 2 weeks would be better for me on that regard, too.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess to your point, like, that first thing that you said is kind of the most important thing out of all of it. Because the way that this thing should work is you and I are best friends, and we have been forever. You and I have a friendship, a relationship outside of this podcast, and this podcast is about a thing, and it's entertaining or interesting or whatever because we have that friendship. And to me, it is on us to make sure that that thing is exists completely outside of this podcast. So this podcast should just be as a product of our friendship, not like the basis of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, in the sense of like, obviously home games work is very important and like it's a passion in my life, whatever, but whatever. But the other thing is like you and I are supposed to be friends. Like we are friends, and when there's no like, obviously there's no like tension or weirdness here. It's just that like the podcast has made it so we do think like that, where, I'm not going to talk to Yazeed about the way that I'm thinking about this thing or this whatever because we need to have podcast content. But it's not like that makes the content better necessarily. It just makes it more like surprising and kind of like sterile when we talk about it because we're so distant.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's just the way I'm thinking, but I totally agree. But yeah, the whole thing is just I want time to work on home games outside of this podcast because this podcast takes up actually a lot of time just to record and do it, and I enjoy doing it, but we got to budget our time differently, just based on what's important, and what's important is us doing the thing and not so much talking about doing the thing, even though talking about doing the thing is super important to me, at least.
Yeah, I agree. It helps me keep focused. When I start working on home games, I'm like, yes, I'll definitely be able to talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah,
it makes me feel good to get on a podcast having done something and being like, yeah, bitch, I did stuff.
Yeah, but I don't want it to be like a pressure. I mean, obviously there's pressure on some level because that's kind of the point. Is because if we didn't have this public thing, we would kind of just bitch out on the whole project because it's kind of what you do with side projects unless you have pressure. And this is the point again, is what I'm saying. But I don't want it to be artificial pressure. I want it to be kind of more of like a check-in on what you're doing, and like what you're doing should be something natural and genuine, and then that 2-week check-in is kind of just a check-in on the project, and then we can kind of, obviously I don't really have a idea for what I want that structure to be. I think the very loose thing of like, we'll talk about whatever and then we'll throw in home game stuff, I think that's kind of still what I want it to be. But I feel like just having it more spaced out gives us more room for that stuff to breathe and for us to bring more into live experience and stuff, instead of just like, well, I just finished editing the last one 4 days ago, and then I worked on home games for 6 hours, and then I had my whole life and my job and my wife and my house and my family and shit. It's like, you have like, we have shit. So I just want to give us room for that.
Yeah. We'll play Rainbow Boys or something in the week off.
yeah, and we need to do that because like we haven't played Rainbow Boys in forever, and like the Rainbow Boys was like an event when on the episode that we played it was like, oh man, we fucking hung out. It's like, that shouldn't be an event.
Shit, I forgot to tell you this. Did you see the Ubisoft news?
What news?
They're killing the servers for Vegas 2.
Dude, this is like the end of an era today. The end of Home Games Podcast V1 and end of our favorite game.
Yeah, they're killing like a bunch of old game servers. So like a bunch of their old stuff, they're no longer going to be hosting servers for them anymore. So we actually won't be able to play Rainbow Boys together unless we figure out some other pathway to play it.
I hope there's a one of those like weirdo communities that you hear about where it's like, oh, there's like 3 guys keeping this entire fucking game server alive for 12 people. I kind of hope that there's someone out there doing that.
We can be those guys. We could host on home games.
Yeah, let's just rebuild their servers in home games and somehow that'll work. I don't know. That's a bummer. It's kind of the other side of like game preservation. You can keep the game, you can keep the console that runs it, you can keep the everything that was just as it was or whatever, but the online connectivity stuff is always just in the moment. You can never preserve that, and it'll always go away.
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut off the announcement stuff because the announcement stuff is, I think, more important. But I think I forgot to tell you about that on the podcast that I had read that for, and then I just remembered right now talking about like this announcement stuff and Rainbow Boys. It's like, oh my god.
But yeah, we should definitely play Rainbow Boys until the wheels fall off on that, because fuck, that's a bummer. But whatever. That game came out 13 years ago. You can't expect it to be.
Well, I play World of Warcraft, and that also came out 13 years ago.
You pay for that every month. But yeah,
I sure do.
It's an interesting thing. It's like I've said over the past few months, like I've started to realize how much I care about game preservation. So that's just kind of a funny thing. But anyway, yeah, announcements. So anyway, that was the one thing. Every 2 weeks instead of every week. No real changes to the structure. Basically, Yazeed and I just need space to be better at everything else, which will make this better too.
Hopefully, that's the goal.
Yeah. And if not, like, obviously we're open to feedback and stuff like that. I mean, whatever. Like, send us thoughts if you have thoughts on this stuff or whatever. The other one I haven't mentioned to you, Yazeed. What if we kill Song of the Week?
What if we kill Song of the Week? I mean, listen, I did Song of the Week the first time. It's just like a rapid fire question thing. So it was just there as like a fun thing to talk about at the end. I'm okay with killing Song of the Week.
Yeah, I think because it's like, it's fun to be like, oh, this is a thing where we work on stuff, and part of me always wanted to become a music person or work in music or talk about music, and I just love music, so it's kind of like, well, let's add that into this thing, and it's like, well, fuck it. It's just not. It'll make it easier to just not. So we're kind of removing a lot of Tynan's showcases here because we're removing all the songs and all the segments and stuff. But I'm just thinking about what this thing looks like on episode 82 or whatever, coming back, and I set up a what is it called? GarageBand on my Mac, which has a lot more of an intuitive interface to record audio. So when we do them in person, I can record hopefully better quality audio without needing to work so hard. Again, it's kind of that thing of how much of this do we need to build ourselves, and how much of this are like, what are we trying to get out of it, and what do we need to actually do, and what do we need to automate or pay for or whatever. So using simpler software is kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, I'll just learn how to fucking mix podcasts. It's like, I can't just do that in like the 30 minutes a week where I like give to this, to the not to this, to the improvement of the podcast quality. Like that time is it's a very small amount, and it's not realistic to like learn how to master this thing in that time every week. So anyway, hoping things just kind of are different, and thinking about what different is, and we don't need Song of the Week, kind of the way I think about it.
Yeah, I'm cool with dropping Song of the Week. I will ask that we keep, when Spotify does their yearly review, we do it then.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that one of the things that I didn't really expect going into this podcast was I would come out liking rap and hip hop, or having an appreciation for it. That's something that I didn't expect coming into this. So I feel like I've developed that slowly over the 81 episodes or whatever. The 81 episodes minus the ones I wasn't on.
Yeah. And I think that, there's still like room for it or whatever. But every week it's got like my feedback is always just like, yeah, this shit's like not really what I listen to. It's like pretty spacey, I guess. Anyway, my song was Young Thug. It's like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah, so. I think that's one of the funnier things is I feel like a lot of people's friends have very similar music tastes, or at least like from like my brother and his friends, they have like very similar music tastes, but like we don't, which makes Song of the Week fun for me personally because I get to force you to listen to something I will listen to, and I get to learn a little bit more about hip hop. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe, I mean, I'm not opposed to bringing these things back. I'm not opposed to doing this on a weekly basis. I think, like, honestly, these things that we're changing are just because that's the way that our lifestyles, or at least, you know, in my head, the way that my life is, this is better suited to the way that I think things should be or whatever. And a lot of that is because... yeah, this thing is not like number one in the way that I like to live my life because this doesn't make me money. And at the end of the day, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like it has to be a thing where if every week you're spending time doing this thing and you're like, oh man, I have maybe 12, 15 hours this week to work on this thing. And half of that is spent editing and processing the talking about this thing. It's like, well, this doesn't make a lot of sense because a lot of that time is actually spent just doing nothing. Well, not, you know, nothing, but you know what I mean. So if it's every 2 weeks, it's like, well, then I have the time to really like put into it across these 2 weeks, kind of in my free time, to really make a substantive thing and have kind of a substantial deliverable or some sort of state of progress or whatever in those 2 weeks. So like I said, I just think it'll make things better. Anyway, just wanted to mention that. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, Yazeed.
No, I mean, like, listen, I'm similar to you. Like, I'm cool. I'm not. I think I mentioned on a different podcast. Like, I'm 100% okay with changing any part of the podcast. Like, yeah. I'm cool. Whatever we want to do with it, I'm cool with it. I just enjoy doing the podcast. Yeah. And it helps me keep like a goal in mind when I work on stuff. To like, I would like to have something to talk about on every podcast. So even if it's just like conceptualizing something or like reading something, I'd like to bring that to here. But yeah,
it's like that pressure I mentioned earlier, like that very small, slight thing to be like, you have a responsibility. Like, this is a thing in your life, you know, even if it's not like a pressing deadline or a project or manager or any sort of specific thing. It's like, this is a thing you're doing.
Yeah, I won't get fired from my job for not doing home game stuff, but at the same time, I will go onto the podcast and be like, I did fuck all. So
yeah. and then you'll like look at my face real hard in those 5 seconds to see if I'm judging you or not.
Yeah, actually, just, that's not even that's not even a joke. I do that all the time.
Yeah, I don't.
It was easier to tell your immediate reaction when we didn't have notes, because now you have time to look at what I'm going to talk about and be like, this guy slacking off again. But you do it in private before the call.
I think you're reading into it, because it's kind of like I've always mentioned, you know, I'm just happy that you spend any amount of time every week doing this with me. So that's cool. You can show up and be like, yeah, man, fuck your project. Right on.
Listen, if I ever needed to quit, I'd be a little bit more Yazeed with you than that.
If you ever need to quit, you'd be like, haha, I have a funny story, let me tell you. And then just tell me.
I would not quit like that. I'd be like, listen, bud, I'm out. I just send you that text message. Like, out of what?
It's actually on a related, we're kind of off the rails already, whatever. Just gonna mention Giant Bomb, my like favorite podcast, but I also haven't listened to it in like 4 years. Basically, kind of like it's going through a huge shift/change right now. Basically, like 3 of the 4 original people who started that whole thing kind of are leaving, like all on the same day. So it's like a big thing. It's one of those, you know, your favorite podcast ended. But I had that before with my favorite, which was NoobTube, which was it was on YouTube in like 2006, 2007. Anyway, podcasts end. It's kind of weird to think about, but they do. So, Giant Bomb shifts. It's not over, but you know, different. It's just weird to think about.
Yeah. It's like one of those things where, like, I guess in tech, This is like somewhat related, and I guess in tech, like most people switch jobs like every 3 years or so.
Yeah.
So I feel like I wonder what that is for podcasts. I feel there's like two different. You have to like look at podcasts differently because there's like the podcast that people did for like 3 episodes and then they just quit, and there's the podcast that they did for like years and years. And I don't think there's much in between.
Yeah, and I think another thing too is like the beauty of the Giant Bombcast is that they made you forget there was a business behind it. They made you forget that you're paying them every year for a premium subscription, or you're getting ads on the website or whatever, but they're basically getting money for this. And their podcast is like a product and that whole kind of thing, and they're trying to fill it with more ads, and it is what it is. But the actual end product to you is like the beauty of a podcast of, these people are just talking and they're enjoying each other's company and they're talking naturally and off the cuff and giving their opinions on stuff. And so I think like the art is when you have the business and you don't make it obvious. Like that's the thing. You and I, we have none of that stuff.
We have no business.
We have no business. And I imagine it would complicate things a lot if we did. And if we had something like, ownership percentages, and then like if there was salary and like fucking just contracts and weird, like that would weird things up a lot. And even if you and I are the best of friends, that would change shit. And it's just like it's hard to think about. So anyway, I'm gonna think about. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean the other thing too with like advertisements, right? Advertisements are like different. Some of them could be like you need to run our ad X many times, which means your podcast needs to be like longer than that. So if you need to run marshmallows twice, you won't run them back to back. It doesn't make sense. So you run like marshmallows, then you run like another ad, then you run like marshmallows afterwards. That's setting like a minimum length for your podcast. Whereas like for us, we're just like sat down with notes. I haven't looked at the notes since the opening. That's where we're at right now.
I think and money will just make things weird. So I don't know. I don't know what that would even look like. We're obviously not doing that, but like I don't know. It's just something to think about. It's weird. That's all I have to say on it, I guess.
It would be. I mean, listen, set up a Patreon or an OnlyFans. Just feed us money.
Yeah. It's like anyway, yeah. Linus Tech Tips did an OnlyFans, and it was like kind of an experiment, but he ended up making a lot of money on it. So it's kind of one of like a legitimate thing, people pay for that content. It doesn't have to be like sexual. You don't have to bust it open on our OnlyFans. You can just kind of like
pay $10 for Joseph's feet pics. That's all I'm saying.
No one wants my feet pics, dude. I like bruised my toe real fucked. Like when I put this desk together, you don't want to see my feet pics.
I was gonna say something, but I'll say it off air.
Okay.
If I remember.
I have more topics here after whatever that intro was.
The one thing I did want to talk about real quick is I gave up my gamer chair. I gave up my gamer chair. Yeah, I gave up my gamer chair. I got like a regular old, like I'm a wage earner, vanilla dude chair now. I got like I went and I found an ergonomic chair because I was working and I was supposed to be on a meeting, and sitting in my chair for so long, I was like, my back hurts, my butt hurts. Like, they're not gonna fire me. So I literally like laid down in my chair. Like I'm talking like my shoulders were on the seat cushion and I was like flat up on the chair, and they're like, what is going on? And I was like, it is what it is. and after that I realized like I can't just keep doing this. So I got myself a regular office person chair. It's very comfortable. It has like mesh everywhere. Nice. And it's nice. It's very cooling in this hot desert heat. Even though my house is like 75 max, it just keeps everything cooler, and I like it.
Yeah. Well, you're the coolest guy on the planet, so it's super cool when you're in that chair,
Thank you. That means a lot coming from a sneakerhead like you.
I went to visit my nana this weekend. Synovia and I went to visit my nana, and my nana was like roasting me the entire time, and she's like, "Oh, you got a mustache? You think you're cool now?" Like, holy shit! I came to say hello. Anyway, I was gonna say something. Oh, I've been in the market for another chair too because I realize I'm like an adult man and having a fucking DX racer in my professional calls is not something I'm interested in. So I might be upgrading sometime soon as well.
What blows my mind is like streamers will use those chairs, but I don't know how. I've had that chair for not that long. I don't think, like maybe a year or two, and it started hurting my back and my butt. It's like if you're a streamer and you're in that chair for like 8-9 hours at a time, your spine's gotta be busted, or you have like a redonkulous badonkus. You know what I'm saying? Like something to really pushing you.
Yeah. Maybe I have a redonkulous badonkus because I've been mostly fine. I've got terrible posture, but that's always been a problem. So I don't even really use the back of the chair because I'm always just fucking,
I don't even know what to say to that. I realized it was a problem when I would start to like shift oddly in my chair. It's like normally, like right now I'm just like sitting and chilling, right? But like when I was with that chair, I'd be like leaned off to the side or like over. My favorite one is when your legs are over one armrest and your back is against the other because your back is like the backrest isn't doing it for you. Yeah, not great. New chair going well so far, but this is also day one. We'll see in like a year and a half if I still have this thing.
Very nice. Yeah, well, mine has lasted 5 years, which I realized is actually a super long time for a chair.
That's really long.
Looks like that. So yeah, whatever. We'll figure it out.
I will say one last thing on it. I was reading the instructions on it, and I think maybe it was like a translation error, but it said the average user for this chair is 6 feet tall and 300 pounds, and I was like, I don't think so. I don't think that's true.
That's basically me. So I mean, I'm pretty average. Like I'm a fucking neckbeard weirdo sitting in my chair all day.
You're in a racing chair. That's a good time. But you're like in a racing chair. You're not in like like this chair. If you walked into like an open space office right now, you'd see a chair like this for sure. And you wouldn't even blink. You'd be like, it's just, like whatever, an office chair. Like your mind would really just like block it out as like whatever. That's like an office chair.
Well, that's what I don't think Synovia thinks like that because it's like been the most infuriating thing because she's also been looking to upgrade her office chair, and her main thing is aesthetics. She does not really care about functionality, like how high does it sit, what kind of cushioning does it have adjustable whatever stuff. Like she's like, nah, is it cute? Because it's gonna be in our home. It's like, okay, but it's a chair that you're gonna use, like. Anyway, it's a whole thing. The way that maybe yours and my like brain just skip over things like that, she looks at it.
I was like, it needs to be high enough for me to sit at my desk. It needs to be back adjustable for the lumbar, and it needs to have the arm adjusters for my elbows and shoulders and wrists. And I was like, if it hits all those goals, it's going in. I don't care. It's probably black was. I looked at the colors and it was like one was like red, and I was like, I'm not a red chair kind of person. It's just like a black plain chair. You know what I'm saying, dude? Like this chair is vanilla AF.
Yeah, red chair is aggressive. I agree.
Yeah. We move on to home game stuff though.
Yeah, let me just say briefly, we finished The Sopranos finally. I don't know if I mentioned that last week or when, but we finished the show finally real. So,
what were your final thoughts on it? Going into it, I know you knew what the show was. Did you leave with like a better appreciation for it, or was it pretty much what you remembered?
It's kind of worse than I thought because basically that last season, and it's like Synovia mentioned this too. When the last season of a show feels like the last season, it's kind of wrong because typically what that means is like they're trying to get things to the end, and if you can feel them trying to get things to the end, it's some sort of problem. So like the end of The Sopranos was, there's been this building tension for a couple seasons between one particular dude, and that's going to be the tension that kind of closes out the show. Things are mostly okay until that last few episodes, and then the last few episodes, characters start to act stupidly, and then bad things happen because they needed to happen because the show was written that way. So like basically a bunch of dudes getting shot to death because they didn't have guns on them. And it's like, bro, you're in the mafia. Why don't you have a fucking gun on you? You know what I mean? Like simple things like that. Which again, it's because the show had to happen that way. And the ending, I think, is like the thing that people always remember. It's like it's the famous, probably in my head, the most famous, well-known TV show ending, where it just cuts to black. That's the ending.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't really mind that so much because I think it's whatever. It's a like I think that shows that episode still tells you something. Basically, it's like it doesn't matter if Tony dies in the end. It's the fact that he's going to, like, his life is not going somewhere good, and it's not about if any of these three sketchy or particular, like, you know, suspicious people killed him. It's the fact that you're so interested in all these three people because it's kind of how he lives his whole life. He's like looking at everybody with this like over analytical type thing of like, who's going to kill me, because you know it's going to be someone. That's kind of the whole that's kind of the whole episode. It's going to be someone. That's the point. Anyway, I still think it's a really great show. I just don't really like when characters that you like kind of go out sad because of bad or lazy or quick or whatever writing, you know.
Yeah. I feel your pain.
Game of Thrones, because that's my next thing. So I'm going to be disappointed, I'm guessing.
Listen, the first few seasons are great. Even at the end, like, listen, there's like a turn your brain off and just watch the show kind of vibe to it at the end, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, honestly, like, it's whatever. I will say Adventure Time had a great ending. I liked Adventure Time's ending quite a bit.
Yeah. Is there like a grand epic story, though, that would disappoint you like Game of Thrones would?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The Adventure Time's a little bit different, right? Like, it's not like The Sopranos where it's this, it's like that. I think at the end of the show, basically they kind of like tie together some of the storylines and everything, and they kind of like reaffirm that your main character is grown up and has dealt with like the things that he needed to deal with. Basically, like he came to terms with certain things. Yeah, that's why I liked Adventure Time. He just wrapped up a lot of stuff, and I wrapped up for the characters, and it didn't do what you said. Like it wrapped up characters in a way that made like sense for those characters, which was nice.
Well, to be clear, it's not that these endings for these characters didn't necessarily make sense. I think it's kind of like a logical ending for all these characters. It's just that you have a show where you build up a character so much and like their way of thinking. The Walking Dead has this problem so much. I stopped watching that shit season 4 because it's so bad at this. But it's like you set up a character and you make them act a certain way, so you have expectations of the way that they will react in certain situations, and you have a vested interest in this character because you like them or whatever. So when they act completely outside of that character just for the story to happen the way it needs to, you're like, fuck you and fuck this show. That's all I cared about was that character, and you made it dumb. You know? Yeah.
I mean, Adventure Time ends without any of that. Like, it literally just like it resolves everything. I will say that one thing I wish it did was the second to last villain. I wish they had more time with them, because it sets up as like civil war basically, and I wish we had more time to like see what that meant. But I mean, it's a kids show. I'm not gonna be like, they need to talk about like the nitty gritty, like the political and economic impacts of what a civil war between the Candy Kingdom would mean.
Like, tell me why it was really about states' rights in the Candy Kingdom.
But yeah, if you were gonna watch a cartoon, I would say watch Adventure Time. I think it's probably the most influential cartoon from America in like ever, probably since like Dragon Ball Z or whatever.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's been on my list. Like I recognize the characters, which is kind of speaks to the nature of like how iconic or whatever that show is, of just being able to see them and be like, oh, I know that dog thing or whatever from
Jake the dog. Oh, they're coming out with they have a like post last season. It's called like distant lands or distant something. And it's like it shows you like select characters in each episode, like what they've done like distantly in the future from the last episode of the show. and we're gonna see Jake the dog and Finn on this one. And we know from the last one that Jake dies at some point. We also know from like the show that Jake dies at some point. But like, I don't know if this episode they're gonna show me Jake dying. I don't know if I'm emotionally ready to watch probably like one of my top 3 favorite characters in a TV show dying on screen.
Well, big spoiler alert there for people who have not seen that show. But I was gonna also mention really quick, I started watching Breaking Bad season 2. It's so much better than season 1, and I'm excited for you to watch season 2.
Yeah, that's I think probably like the next show I'm gonna start is Breaking Bad season 2 and just went from there.
Yeah, because season 1's kind of hot trash compared to season 2. And then season 2 is decent compared to the rest of the show. So I totally get why you stopped watching the first season. Anyway, yeah, I'm excited for you to watch that, because basically I haven't watched that show in full since 2012. So I basically am re-experiencing a lot of the specifics of what happened. I kind of know general things, in my head, but they get fuzzier over time. So it's been a cool thing.
Nice. I'm excited to see it and just go through it with you and see the emotional roller coaster that is. I think that's like considered like the best TV show of all time. So I'm excited.
Certainly by me, and I'm the only one who matters. So yeah, that's correct. All right, are you ready to move on to home game stuff?
I am. Yeah.
Home game stuff. I have been meaning to look at your pull request, and I read it over, and I said, in my head, I was like, this functionally makes sense. Syntactically, maybe I have comments, but ultimately, what's the value of those comments when all of this stuff needs to be syntactically cleaner anyway? By that, I just mean the variable names that you used and the way it was kind of like, I was like, oh, maybe I can write some words here that'll make you rewrite this and then take another week for me to say, yep, you changed those words. So there's no real value to that. So basically, there's like a, in my head, thumbs up. I just haven't done the full official thing yet.
I will say, if a function or something doesn't make sense, do you think there's a better way to do some things? I would like those comments, even if it is with a thumbs up, just so I can know for future reference where I need to improve. Please.
I guess I think I know what things should look like.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know how things should be structured. I have opinions on formatting and style and whatever. I have opinions. And I think I might have mentioned this before on the podcast, but basically I don't know that I'm right, and I'm not necessarily willing to go to bat for a lot of these opinions. I'm willing to discuss them and say why I think them, but I'm not going to be there like defending things to the death because I'm not that dug into them. Mm-hmm. So all that is to say, I think there are a lot of problems across the way that our code is, the way that it's so fragile, and it doesn't read super well, and there are magic variables, and it's inconsistent, and there's hacks. This is all coming from me for the most part. Your stuff has been mostly clean. But my point is that it would be kind of disingenuous to me to even say anything about the style of your code, because I'm just shitting all over our code base all the time. But I do understand that there's value to those discussions, so I will try to put those comments in, but also make it super clear that I am not asking anything of you when I put those comments in. It's kind of just like, this is my thought. Maybe I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't know. For me, I think it would be also interesting to talk about that on the potty, just to see where we're at, because the pull requests are publicly available. If anyone wanted to go and see what my code looks like raw, you could go do that and look at my pull request and be like, why is Yazeed so bad? Or you could be like, I love Yazeed's code, and I would love if somebody commented, Yazeed is good code. It would mean a lot to me.
Yazeed is good code.
Yazeed is good code, just like that.
I think basically there's probably going to be some point in the future, like I keep saying, I'm rewriting stuff, and I've kind of started this process of cleaning up individual files in the Home Games core repo or the Home Games web repo or whatever, but it's kind of that ongoing thing of just like realizing the breadth of how many things need to be worked on, so you kind of like build up little pieces, and you realize just like how much time it takes to build up those pieces. And anyway, you know how it goes.
Yes.
A lot of things to work on.
The technical debt is piling up.
Right, and I would argue that it's not so much technical debt, because the way that things like it is technical debt. The way that things should be are kind of there. The discipline I have had aligning with those kind of guidelines or rules or whatever's in my head while building a lot of the things I've been building has been dog shit. Like, I've been basically not following any of my own rules. And I don't really care, like, it's kind of that thing of you don't build things fast if you want to have a whole hour-long discussion about where you make new lines on the if statements, or how we should treat parameters, or whatever conversation you want to have. Singleton patterns, I don't know, programmers. But you could have that discussion, and at the end of it you have a nice idea of what things should look like, but you have nothing that works. And I still have nothing that works, but it's code. It should work. It's fucked, but it should work. Anyway, that's just how I'm thinking about it. Do you have thoughts on that?
No, yeah, I mean, I will be 100 with you. That is the highest quality code that I would normally put out. So that's why I'm like, if you think that there's things that I could be doing better, that would definitely like make me a better programmer, boy. That's why I was like, you should. But also, it's like, I think that if we were going to talk about like, I think that we should try our best to make home games in a way that when somebody looks at parts of home games, they can kind of understand it. Because when they go to make their own game, they should be trying to emulate art, like the style, if possible, or if there's like a better style, like they should be doing it that way. I don't think people should be making games for home games like as willy-nilly as like just throwing shit at the wall. Not to like say, not to like call you out, but like just like trying to get it to work, because like,
right,
if somebody's gonna like pay money for your game, I feel like you gotta put some effort into it. So
but they wouldn't pay money for your game; they'd pay to tip you because you did such a good job.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Wow, this game is so good, so clean, no bugs." I think we should maybe like try for that too. So, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We can't enforce people, like we talked about this before. We can't like enforce someone's style in their game, but we can make it so someone with little to no experience reading this stuff can look at someone's game and how it interfaces with our system. And even if the game is written in a super shitty way, there's this set of 4 methods that are returning something to this system that's well written and documented and intuitive and smooth and clean and nice and good. The all of those adjectives I just said will eventually describe the code base, and I think you and I are aligned on that. It's just, to me at the moment, all of that stuff doesn't matter when no one else is reading it. No one else is reading it because there's nothing interesting there yet, and the pieces of something that are interesting are there, and you and I know where the pieces are going, and you and I have a thing in our head about what's possible and what's there and how much has changed and whatever, but ultimately no one gives a fuck until they can play a game. So we can have the cleanest, most accessible documentation, but no one will have heard of us until we have something they can play, and no one, and that's just, I think that's how I think. I think I agree with what I just said.
No, I got you. Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Well, my home game this week was essentially setting up Elasticsearch proof of concept. So basically, last week, very, very big energy. Last week we talked about how my data, or I talked about over us talking about, whatever, you get it. I talked about how my data model for the games and assets and stuff in our DynamoDB table was not quite suitable for searching and filtering and adding something like a tag, or basically creating this going from this DynamoDB table to something that is a scalable, nice, good game discoverability service where you can search, you can list, you can get details about a game, and you can tag games as different words and discover games by those things. Like, it just wasn't quite suitable for that. So Yazeed had mentioned last week that Elasticsearch was an option. In addition to some other stuff like Solar, which is an Apache thing or something like that. Yeah. And then I had mentioned at a previous thing, on a previous project, I had built this search service in Python. I didn't mention it was in Python, but it was in Python on top of Postgres. And so Postgres, there is a full text search capability that you can install with an extension, and then there's also just kind of standard string queries where you can say, give me every game where the substring Yazeed exists in it, that kind of thing. And you can build indexes against these in these tables, and it'll make your searches faster and that kind of stuff. And that was what I was comfortable with, and so that's kind of what I was thinking. The actual search you get on top of that database is free. You're just writing code to wrap free Postgres functions, and that's just a database. And so the cost would come in hosting that database, because I'm not going to host that on a machine on my house or something. I'm going to put that on AWS or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I went to RDS, Relational Database Service, in AWS, and was looking at their, I don't look at pricing really like as the first thing. I look at does this do what we need it to do? And then basically pricing does come into play before I pay for something, but it's not the number one priority. And so email is an example of one of those. Our email service from Amazon is actually stupid expensive every month. Just the cost, to have Joseph at homegames.io, it's $5 a month per email address. So it's stupid. But again, there's utility in email, so it's kind of whatever. All this is to say, I went to go look at RDS and said, give me the bare minimum Postgres instance on a toaster. Give me the basics. And it was still hundreds of dollars a month. The initial thing for, kind of a medium instance with 4 virtual CPUs, 4 gigs of memory or something was $600 a month. And then it was okay, give me 1 CPU, 2 gigs of RAM, a basic SSD with very limited operations and stuff, and it was still $115. And I was okay, this is prohibitively expensive. I'm not paying $1,200 a year to host this database that we kind of already have in Dynamo for fucking $10 a month.
Yeah.
So what do we do? And then I was kind of thinking, and then little Yazeed played in my head. It was Elasticsearch. Joseph, look at Elasticsearch. Okay. And I had set up what is known as the ELK stack before. And for those unfamiliar, that is Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. And totally unrelated to this, I'll just briefly say it's a system where you can take logs that your service or application generates, and then Logstash or some other thing will basically take these logs out of your application and put them into Elasticsearch, or some reserve, and then Elasticsearch or whatever. But the point is, it's just a pipeline out of your application into Elasticsearch, which is a bunch of magic software where when you're running an Elasticsearch server, you are able to say, hey, here's some data, and it has some keys, and here are the values. And Elasticsearch is oh shit, I know exactly how to make that super fast searchable later. I see that you gave me a key called X, and I see that it's a number. So from now on, I'll remember that you have a thing in your data called X that is a number, and I'll remember that you have a thing called Y that is a word, and I'll remember Z is a floating point number that has a decimal, and it'll just magically remember these things and build up an index, build up a thing in its head, basically, of how your data is structured, and automatically make it fast to search. Builds up these kind of magic indexes that it knows how to traverse quickly. And it's very what's the word? It's
Magic,
opaque.
Black box, yeah.
Yeah, it's opaque to you. You don't know what the fuck is going on. And that's kind of the magic of it, but the downside is when it stops working, what do you do? And that's always the problem with magic. But anyway, these things in the Elk stack, talking again about the Elk stack, Logstash to Elasticsearch, and then Kibana was a way of visualizing these things so you can have your data kind of piped out to this really nice user interface that shows you graphs and shit about basically what's going on in your logs. So I had set that up before. It was a pain in the ass, and I hated it. So I was kind of avoiding Elasticsearch this time, but looked into it again. There's AWS hosted Elasticsearch, so I didn't have to set up any cluster or whatever. There's no Logstash or whatever equivalent here. It's just Elasticsearch. There's no they provide Kibana, but I don't need it, so I'm not using any of those features. So basically, yeah, I have an Elasticsearch cluster that I had set up for this stuff, and then instead of Logstash to use, kind of like a pipeline in my application, it's a Lambda function. So basically, game records are put into the DynamoDB table, the same table that we had before. That creates an event on what's called an event stream that AWS has for this Dynamo table, which is kind of an optional thing you can opt into, where your table will just basically omit events, not emit events. And then it'll send these events out to a Lambda function in this case, which is then saying, okay, I see a new thing in your database. I'm basically just going to take the data, put it into Elasticsearch. And every time this happens, I'm just going to do the same thing. Pipe it out over here. And this happens however many times a second or minute or whatever. Just spin up a new Lambda, execute the function, and then put it into Elasticsearch. So basically everything becomes immediately searchable once it's put into the database. And that's it. I set that up, and it's fast, and it's great, and it's magic, and I'm afraid of it, like I said, because I don't like magic.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how they do it. It really truly is magic. Like, I have no idea how they built the algorithms behind Elasticsearch or Solar or whatever, but damn, does it work fast. I will agree. Yeah. I will agree. We use Solar, so it's like, I know the thing blazes fast. When you're like, give me anything that has potato in it, it's like, boom, here you go. Potato? Do you want potatoes? Potato? Son, here you go. I'm like, oh man, it's faster than if I hit our actual database.
Yeah, I had built that before. Like, it was a suggestion thing too, so it would be like, as you typed, it would give you the word that maybe you meant this, maybe you mean this, whatever. And it was like 400 lines of Python. And I was super proud of that stuff. So in my head, I was just like, I'll just do that again. I'll just like fucking write that thing again on our shit and make it open source. It's the same thing. It's like a generic search wrapper over your Postgres thing. But when I saw that like bill estimate, like $115 a month, I was like, nope, fuck all this. Go do something.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't know it was going to be that expensive. But I'm glad you got Elasticsearch set up and it wasn't a nightmare for you. So
yeah,
that's good.
No, it was fine. There was some, obviously there's always kind of the hurdle of setting up your VPC and your security groups and all that kind of stuff in AWS. Like, I've been setting that shit up for years, and every single time I still was like, what's the security group? What ports need to be open here? Type thing. But it's good. It's and it's nice. So the next thing will be continuing on what I've been doing, which is making all of these games and stuff in this database more searchable, creating this user interface in the website to discover games instead of just through the Home Games app. So basically, you go to homegames.io, there's all this shit, and then at the bottom, it's like, hey, here's some games. Here's Yazeed published Square, Joseph published this, Doodad, whatever the hell I'm like working on. And you have these games, and you can have kind of that catalog idea that I mentioned. I don't remember if I mentioned it on the podcast, but like, where I was talking about the idea of you have an API that generates a Game Informer type, like, this thing is like the featured, like, sections and descriptions of games, like physical magazine looking things. You can have an API that generates the data for that thing. So basically creating
that was lost last episode, because I think you talked about last episode. So you wouldn't explain.
But yeah, no, that was my idea, was like, basically home games is pulling a list of games that are available for you to download and play, which is a game catalog. And that game catalog has the game, the name, the author, the thumbnail, the description, all the details that go into making a magazine, basically. Like if you think about your game is featured in a magazine, then you have a page and you have kind of like you have like a featured thing basically for you on that page. And we can basically programmatically generate something that looks like that, and a cool, like, your game is featured in a service that we provide API thing, and the API basically is being used to feed the actual home games application to get the games and what they are, and also from a marketing kind of perspective on the website, where you have, like I said, you have a list of games here. Here's every game that's published. You can paginate through them, you can search through them, you can filter, and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, with Elasticsearch, I think I'm in a place now where I kind of understand how these things are working, at least on a basic level, and I know how to build what I need to. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the next couple weeks, is building out this thing. And realistically, in 2 weeks, I'll probably have a lot of progress on that, which is nice.
Yeah, nice. I'm glad. I like it. I also like your little your commentary on it in the notes. For my side of things, I was thinking a little bit at one of the things we talked about last week was how we would store Twitter tokens and things like that. And I think I was kind of thinking about it, right? So I think there's two cases, right? So like you're playing a game, you're playing like who tweeted this tweet, basically, right? So who tweeted this tweet? There's two options. Either you want to be able to save your Twitter token, or you don't. Now, why you don't want to save your Twitter token, I don't care about. But there is a case where you don't want to store like a social media like API key, basically.
Sure.
Okay. So we needed a way of like saying like this, we don't want you to be able to store it. And I was saying like, okay, there could be an environment variable, which I think is probably a good idea to say like, this environment allows storing tokens, right? It's like, so say for like Pico de Gallo, we don't necessarily want people to be able to store their tokens through Pico de Gallo. They should probably like store it on their own instance or whatever, which I think is nice. The other option though is they do want to store their token, and I think that maybe what I was going to ask you about is like, is it possible for us to store a user's token on home game stuff, basically, to like on like one of our servers, like Landlord or something like that, to host their tokens?
Yeah, we can. In terms of if it's a good security idea, I don't actually know, but we could definitely limit it so, basically only you, if you're authenticated as the user who generated and provided this key, are you able to retrieve it for 24 hours, or restricted to time or restricted to whatever. But there's ways to make it like more of a good idea, but again, I don't know if it is a good idea.
Yeah, because here's what I was thinking about, right? Because you and I aren't going to be looking at every game, if we do allow people to store their tokens locally, what we would run into is like, yo, this game just takes your token and sends it somewhere. And we wouldn't really have a way of preventing that, because that's just stored in like an environment variable or whatever, like a keys structure or whatever. Or even if we like encrypt it, we still need to decrypt it so that they have it anyway. So I was thinking like, okay, if we kept it on home game's side, the only way to get it is via a home game's request, and we would be able to notify you, this game is asking for this. Are you cool with giving the game this token?
Oh shit. Okay. So it persists. It's not just a session thing. Okay.
Yeah. Because so I don't like, if I was playing home games on my computer, right? Like I'm inviting my friends over, we're going to play home games. I don't want it to be like, okay, we're going to start this game. Let me whip out the old API key and start typing away on my phone or whatever to like get the API key into it. So I thought like maybe what we could do is like, you get the screen, you enter your API key. If the environment allows you to, you can save your key up, right? So now you saved your key to your account. And then going forward, next time I start up who tweeted this tweet game. You get notified who tweeted this tweet would like to access your Twitter token. Are you gonna give them permission? And as long as you have a Twitter token up there and you say yes, the game now has access to your Twitter token. Because I don't think there's another way around protecting those tokens at all. Because if somebody was just gonna play a game or whatever, that game, unless one of us was vetting all of that or had some way of vetting it,
you're just sending that token to some function in code that someone wrote, and so what is that code doing? We have no way of knowing.
Yeah. I mean, they could be just sending those out to whoever. I mean, they could just be literally just like putting them up on a list, and now there's like we've accidentally leaked Twitter keys, and I think that gets us in trouble with Twitter.
Maybe.
And that's true about like all social media access tokens, because I don't necessarily want to continuously have to type out my token every time I start the same game on home games. But that's just like a me thing, maybe.
No, that's not just it's not like normal people are out here like, oh fuck yeah, AQF
AQF $___. Yeah.
Exactly. No, yeah, I think obviously I'm super hesitant about storing someone's API key. That just feels like that just feels wrong. But yeah, you're right. So back to like the two kind of use cases. I either am okay with tech and I am saying, okay, I'm familiar with what this thing is doing. It's pulling something from my local file system. So I can put a file here called homegames.json, and maybe it has my token in it, and that's just stored on my computer. I understand that because I did CS 101 or whatever. So, okay, cool. Most people are not that person. So what do we do for those people? Making those things accessible to people is super valuable, but at the same time, the idea of generating an API key for Twitter is not something that my grandmother is ever going to do. It's not something that these normal people that we're talking about are really ever going to do. You have to be willing to fuck around a little bit, and I'm okay with that because that's kind of the nature of the project. I don't think we'll ever really hit like a mass market normie type thing because it requires like effort to get into, you know what I mean? Which maybe will always bottleneck us, but that's a separate conversation. But I do think it makes sense to provide some sort of easy thing, the same way that like your browser will say, hey, you signed into Facebook one time 6 years ago. Want us to use that password still? You're just like, yeah, sure. I don't even know what that password is anymore. And so I think something like that about, making it convenient. I think that we would need to do something like AWS Secrets Manager or something like that, where basically we don't have... No, because we can still access it in Secrets Manager. I want it to be like Cognito. Our way that we have users set up in Cognito is that you have your username and you have your password. We have access to see your email address that you sign up with, but at no point in my possession or Yazeed's possession or it's not possible for us to look at passwords that are going through this because we don't store them in any way on our side. We simply bypass that text, the password text, to Cognito, which is an Amazon service. It authenticates stuff. We get a token back. We get those tokens, and we only deal in tokens. We don't know what your password is. We can't know what your password is. If someone got my password and all this whatever stuff and got root access to the AWS account, they cannot read your password. That should be the case for the Twitter API keys. We have no access to it. So there's going to be obviously like a technical thing involved in how we do that and how we make that work. But I think that's an important thing, is we shouldn't have access to even see those keys.
Yeah, I think that the reason I think that we should store it over like a local file is
we should do both.
We should give the option if you want to, but I'm I am hesitant on if people understand. Like to me, it's like if I was gonna make a game, and let's say I was in a ne'er-do-well, I would just make a game that just asks for everything and just sends it over, and who's gonna know? And I mean, like no one's vetting these games, so if somebody like found your game and they just tried.
We are vetting them eventually.
Eventually, yes, but not immediately.
Yes,
so there's a chance that they could get a hold of keys in the meantime before one of us gets to it.
Yes, but if you go to home games and you opt into games that are not approved, and then you find a game that says, hey, give me all your API keys, and then you do it, maybe don't, like just maybe don't.
Well,
but I feel like
what I'm saying is that we don't have a way of limiting them unless they're asking us for their keys. Because if they have to make a request to home games, we would know, and we could be like, they're requesting something from home games. You need to, like, the user gets prompted about that.
Then at that point it becomes like a thing about making people aware that when home games is accessing these keys, it will look like this. We will never ask you to type it into a text box. We will never, whatever, because it's basically trying to teach people about what scams look like. And trying to make sure that our system looks and operates in a way that is, easy to avoid the fucking, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And really, the main thing is I want us to be safe from if somebody did make a game like that and it was, but that was the cause of it. I don't know, but I think we might be able to get in trouble for just having a way of leaking keys like that.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's like I haven't read through all of that, the TOS on it. It's like I have no idea what all needs to go into it.
But it's like I said, we need a legal person. I went to LegalZoom.com and I went to their other. Then it was like, click here to talk to us. I was like, oh, guys, there's not just like a button for open source software guy doing a podcast who has a job still. So I don't know what to do. I left.
Yeah. I don't know if maybe you were the one who told me this, but there was an interesting stat that like the indie games that actually like get made and become big, they're like 90% more likely if the person making it isn't the primary source of income for their family.
That's what Alex was telling me. He was like trying to get me to just fucking drop out of life to just go full on in this thing. It's like, I'm not there yet.
Yeah. Like I guess like Celeste and a bunch of other games, like the person who made it wasn't the like breadwinner of their family, and so like they could just do that, which is somewhat of a hilarious bottleneck for you and me.
Yeah, the dude that made Stardew Valley, I think, was like that. He worked as like a ticket taker at the Cinerama, I think, downtown Seattle, and then he built Stardew Valley in his free time. His girlfriend like paid for all their expenses for years, and now they're super millionaires. That's crazy.
That girlfriend is probably like, I made this this happen. She's probably balling out right now. Hell yeah. I don't know.
Cool fuck, though.
It does. I was just thinking like how would we even go about it? But I do think what we do need to add in is like a homegames.json file or like a .env file or something, because I don't want people playing Pico de Gallo and then assuming that it would like get their token for Pico de Gallo. I think like Pico de Gallo should be like pure. Like if you're gonna use Pico de Gallo, type in your damn token.
If you're using Pico de Gallo, that's our token. If you're using Pico de Gallo, that's our token. Yeah, because we're paying. That's our demo. That's my game server.
So we're gonna have our Twitter keys in there.
Yeah, I mean we're gonna have to figure out something, but Pico de Gallo shouldn't ask people for their Twitter API key because we're hosting that. That should use our shit.
Okay, then.
Okay. But there is the technical thing of you have a hosted instance and how do you get your keys in here? There is that technical thing, like, yeah, we'll figure it out. But Pico de Gallo, at least, just specifically talking about that demo, that is the public version of if I had this thing running in my house and everything was set up and I had my keys and all this shit configured, and you could just play games without having to worry about the configuration. What does it look like? Basically, that's the R version of what does that look like. And if you were to set it up over here, you need we have a config file for what it's worth. You know, we don't have like as simple as a homegames.json, but there is a config file at the root of homegames, where you put in essentially environment variables. And so, basically, but whatever. That all is going somewhere and doing something, but I don't know.
Yeah. We just need to figure out a way around that. I think I do think we need to open up both the environment variable way and maybe like a way for us to keep them safe, because if they are safe in quotation marks, because if I was gonna make a game and I knew I needed a token, I'd feel better if people weren't holding that on their local device for other people to snag, because it's not really a good way of like preventing people from snagging those.
Well, you're not the way the person, if you're hosting home games, if you're running home games, you have the API key for Twitter. You configure this in a text file, or you are the person putting it into the website, wherever the fuck you're putting it. But you are the person setting this up, and then it's set up. Everybody else coming to play at your house, they don't know what the fuck a Twitter API key is.
No, yeah. No, what I'm saying is that person, right? I want them to have the choice whether they want to put it on their local file system or if they want us to hold on to it for them. Because if we say, okay, we can hold on to it for you and we'll prompt you anytime a game asks for it, that would give me as a game developer peace of mind for asking for it, as opposed to just being like, yo, put this on your file system and any schmo who makes a game could ask for it and you won't even know. Like, because if I was a ne'er-do-well in Square, I would just ask for every environment variable and just ship it off to some database somewhere and hold on to those, then look through them and be like, oh, I found 1,500 Twitter keys, and then I would leak them all.
Yeah, but I don't even know how valuable that is, because you can just generate a new one.
Yes,
I mean, yes, there is value. I'm just saying, I don't know if someone's really going to be, like, if someone is out there building that kind of, like, virus, basically, for home games, then we will have resources to put into preventing that in a better way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we will, but I do think we may want the two choices, because I do think that if we prompt you every time a game asks for it, I don't know. To me, it's like if we were going to be like, hey, this game is asking for this, so, like, are you cool with that?
Or why not? Hold on. Why not just limit it to games that have been approved? If your game requires an API key or API access, or essentially any home game service that we provide, you can't do it. You can't make that call until it's approved. And like, that's slowing down the pipeline, but it makes sense. You can't call our services unless we vetted your code that's doing it, because like we don't know what the fuck you're doing. And so I think that makes a lot more sense than trying to just trust that it's okay and trying to build UIs that go against that. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm cool with that too. However we handle it, but I do think we need to think a bit about that. I like that approach, actually, where if you want to ask for home games stored tokens, we got to look at your application first.
Well, not necessarily an application. It's just you published this version of this game, and it requires these API calls, and we know it's calling these APIs because we're able to do a static analysis of the code that you submitted, and we see that you're doing this, and then we can say, well, this can't work. Maybe you have a sandbox development environment. Maybe we kind of limit you to that kind of thing until we approve your thing officially. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And for someone to even see those games in the first place, the unapproved stuff, they would have to opt into it through a settings menu. But the way that it would work is people publish the game, it goes into a queue that emails me or whoever, and then that person will approve it. It's approved, and at that point it's immediately available. Other people can search for this game. They don't have to opt into anything. It's just available because whatever, we approved it, and it's calling these APIs, and we have given a sign off on the call to those APIs, I guess, before it's yeah.
And when we're doing the static analysis tool and we're adding it in, could we also let people know like how apps on phones be like, hey yo, this needs your camera, your phone, your microphone, or whatever.
Yeah, we could do something like that. That would be reading through like a metadata thing. Someone basically has to declare what they're using and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that would require like some thought from me. But I think we could do something like that. But
cool. Yeah. That makes me happy. I'm glad. Yeah, that was just something I was like thinking about. I was like, shoot, how would we get around that too? Because in the old way, I don't know how we would do it either. The new way, I was like, I don't remember if we were able to store those things. Can we put more than just like the basic stuff in Incognito?
We can add like custom user attributes, but it's kind of a hack. So that's kind of why I want to find. In a perfect world, there is a service that allows us to simply pass through data and store it in a way that's retrievable by specific people with a password or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could do something like literally we say, okay, you want to use this thing on our service? Use a password. Your password will encrypt this thing. We'll store it on our side encrypted. We don't know your password, so only you can do this. Is we don't really have a way to unfuck it if you forget your password, but whatever. That's like a simple way to do it. In a perfect world, an authenticated Yazeed can always access things that you basically kept in your locker, and we can just retrieve it for you, but we don't have access to it.
I like the word locker as opposed to landlord. Just side note, if I cannot ask for the rename, I think the home game's locker is kind of.
Well, this is like a separate. This is more like a secret and whatever namespace to you, whereas landlord is more data about everything available in home games.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah, maybe.
You could have a locker and a landlord, and a limbo, and a loser, and a Lulu.
I'm right here. No, I mean that was like my big thing. I was thinking about like how we store tokens, how we prompt users to provide their token. All that stuff was like, I was like, okay, like if I'm gonna make this game, that's like step 1, right. Getting the token. Step 2 is using the token, which I know how to do. And then step 3 is building a game around that. So, but yeah, cool.
That would be more infrastructure and all that kind of work, which is kind of what I've been doing for the past few months. So we can kind of talk about what that looks like, and then we can figure out how we want to build it or what we want to build and all that kind of stuff from here. But you might have to get your feet wet with some AWS stuff, dive into the nasty infra world.
I've
see
never
my nasty
used
info.
any AWS, so this will be fun.
Okay, yeah, very fun. It's actually not bad. Like I said, the pain in the ass is VPCs and security.
I don't even know what that is.
Virtual private cloud. Imagine your server exists in the internet that's not on the real internet. Virtual private cloud.
Virtual private cloud.
Yeah. It's real next level shit. Are you ready for a song of the week?
I am ready to find a talk about that.
All right. That's the final song of the week from...
That's right.
Wait, song. The final song of the week song. Go. Truth be told, I have no idea where it ended.
Go about there, no?
Sure. Your song of the week was Gold by Chet Faker. I gotta tell you, I hated this fucking song. This was so boring.
What?
This was 4 minutes of empty space, and sometimes the man would sing a little bit on it, but god damn, this was boring. It was like if a desert was a song. And then at the 4 minute mark, I thought it was over. So, because I saw on the thing on Spotify, it was like 4:45. But at the 4 minute mark, the sound stopped. So I went to Spotify and I just hit the X because I record on this computer and I wanted to just close it on my windows and stuff. So I closed out Spotify, and then I realized there were still 45 seconds in that song. So I had to open up Spotify again. It took 30 fucking seconds. And I went back to the song, skipped to the 4-minute mark where the sound ended. Then it came back up for it was like a beat, for like 30 seconds. It was kind of cool. But I was like, they kept it going for this? And then it ended, and I was like, wow. I closed out Spotify, and I don't want to hear that shit ever again.
Oh my god, dude, that song is like so much depth and layer to it. What the heck? It's the whole point of that song is like the disillusionment of happiness almost.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be
empty.
It's supposed to be like I don't know, but the opening of like the do 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 do, I love that. I don't know.
Yeah, man, this was a song that I listened to once.
I know I'm not gonna be able to convince you that it was a good song. I like that song a lot. That song is one of those. That was like probably my top 10 also. But yeah, it's I love that song quite a bit. It does capture like a whole, like, just kind of like an empty, like that empty feeling that you get sometimes. I don't know, that song just like captures that for me.
Yeah, it's a little too empty. It was a little where the fuck is the fucking song type vibe.
A lot of his songs are like that. I won't even.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a song. I listened to it. I'm glad I listened to it.
There you go. Your song of this week was "Changes" by ASAP Rocky. This song was a vibe, dude. Oh man.
Yeah.
I was kind of vibing to this one. No joke.
Yeah, I this is a song from what in my opinion is ASAP Rocky's best album, called Testing, where he had kind of a lot of songs that did a lot of changes like this and kind of weird shifts and strange voices, and there's one in particular where they have like 2 vocal tracks going at the same time to the same background music, but they're hitting in like different pockets, and it's like fucking crazy. Anyway, it's an interesting album. Changes. I was just thinking in the moment as I was writing the doc for the notes for this episode, was like, oh shit, what's my song of the week? Changes, because things are changing. So that was basically the extent of my thinking. I really like this song. I really like A$AP Rocky. Like, fuck all the other tenants. Bought mine, boy, you rented.
That was a good line. That was a good line for sure. My favorite lines there was, "These ain't monkey bars for no fucking kiddie park." I was like, nice. And then he with the chicky pox, fellas, shitting on me, need a liddy box. I was like, nice. But
then there's like the ad libs in the back, like the like that weird shit. Like that's the whole album. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
One of the things that was interesting about this song, it has like literally like 3 changes throughout it, where it has like the opening, then it goes like it fades to black, and then it opens up again, and it like fades, and then it comes back again. I thought that was like really interesting. I didn't even expect, like, I knew from like looking on Spotify that it wasn't over yet, but I also kind of like didn't want it to be over at any of those breakpoints. Like until the end, I was like, nah, like you can't end it on that. Like come back, give me some more, a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. It's a cool song. It's a cool album, and it's I really like A$AP Rocky. I feel kind of bad that this album is not as liked as it should be. I feel like it's super underrated.
Is this your last song of the week was from this album too, wasn't it?
What was my last song of the week? That was from Playboi Carti. That was
okay.
That was Rockstar Made. Real quick, I was thinking, I have like one of my great regrets in life actually at this point is that last week my song of the week was Rockstar Made, but it actually should probably be like a retroactive song of the week for last week is SB5 by Lil Yachty and Sada Baby. Cause the whole Vegas trip, me and Tynan kept incorporating one of the lines into our speech where the line from the song is, "I'm a lover and a fighter. Keep two sticks on me like Stryker." Stryker, the guy from Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
So that was the line, and so me and Tynan just basically kept ending every sentence to each other with "keep two sticks on me like Stryker." So I just want to give that the proper due that it needs for last week. I'm glad I got that off my chest.
What a line. Do you got anything else?
No, that is it for me. Is that it for you?
Yeah. I will say, speaking of fighting games, I'm not terrible at Tekken anymore. So
That was quick. Was it JC that got you out of the garbage?
JC beats me to death whenever I've played him. But I do beat Zach occasionally now, which is a real step up from when we started. I'd like to continue that upward trajectory, but recently JC and Zach both told me they just sit in the practice mode and practice, and I was like, I don't. So I don't expect to continue to beat them.
Nice. Well, that's progress. I still just do the one kick move and hope I win. So
Same though.
you'd probably beat me.
Yeah, Tekken, find out.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening / watching. As always, our music was done by our friend Tynan. He is Nitan on Bandcamp. That is Nitan, Nytan. Our website is homegames.io. We still continue to add to it, but you should check it out. It's pretty cool, and you can give us feedback on the website. You can also find us on Twitter at homegames.io. All one word, no underscores or anything like that. Homegames.io. Our podcast, we have an email address for this. It's still in the notes that I haven't removed yet. You can email us at podcast@homegames.io. We'll read it on here, probably. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening.